Hello and welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host Ryan, and I'm joined today by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Brett,
Hello.
Alex,
You best be frozen.
and Wyatt. Alex is saying this because we're apparently frozen on his screen and no one else's. So
No.
we're good, but he gets to stare at our lovely half-open mouths the entire time. I like how complacent you seem with that, Alex.
I mean, he's still here, so.
Yeah.
What can I can't do anything about this.
You know what else is an expression that often indicates surprise is having your mouth partway open, and that's the topic of this episode. It's games that surprised us. Oh, what a great transition. We've got some news to get to first, and I'm gonna get out of the way the big one, the one that makes us all very sad, which is that Lance Reddick has passed away, known for Zavala as well as a number of other video game roles and traditional acting roles. Very good in everything he's in.
Yeah, one of the funniest Eric Andre moments.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Oh my
Genuinely.
god, yeah.
Best
You need
bit
a new
in the history
desk.
of that show.
Yeah.
Man,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
absolutely heartbroken. Shame too, because he was relatively young for passing away of natural causes, which is just rough
60 is-
situation.
60 is far too young. Far too young.
At least he gets to go out having been a legendary actor that I think everyone
Yeah.
likes. So
Oh yeah. I've never met someone that doesn't like Lance Reddick. I don't think they exist.
like, what would
To
you be
honest.
on?
It's
like Lance
he-
Reddick.
he-
What rounds would you have?
It's like the Keanu Club.
Because listen, even if he's in a movie or a game you don't like, he always sounds cool. So
He does
like,
his
Yeah.
job.
He's always providing a service to it. So
All right. With that sad news out of the way, let's get to some more fun stuff. I want to talk about a little trademark filing by Valve, which is Counter-Strike 2 has appeared as a trademark and has also been data mined within Counter-Strike Go as like being a thing in there. Very interesting to me that I forgot that the current live Counter-Strike is not numbered Counter-Strike 2.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Did they finally run out of knife skins to sell?
They're never gonna run out of knife skins. People sell
No.
them on their own now. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see what a new Counter-Strike could mean for the competitive PC games space, because we haven't had a lot of new competitive games like that, aside from like Valorant, which I think is now like the biggest competitor to Counter-Strike. So I'd be curious to see how Counter-Strike 2 does with more competition now.
And a sequel like this, I feel like, is such a tricky subject, just because like CS:GO is such an entrenched esports game.
Yeah,
how do
really
you come
loyal community too.
Oh, very loyal. So like, how do you come out with a sequel where it's like, okay, no, play this now, even though
Yeah.
you've like set your entire probably career life around playing this
Yeah.
game. There are tons of tournaments for it. Now you do this. Like that's such a difficult thing to tackle in
It's
Valve's
also
position.
like a lot of the competitive game space has changed since Counter-Strike Global Offensive came out. Like that game has a lot of things that I think people
the
look
rise
back
and
on
fall of
fondly.
battle royales.
Well, yeah, the rise and fall of battle royales, but also things like all chat are not common things to have in games
Oh.
anymore. It's
Yeah.
very strange to play games that are competitive without being able to talk to people outside of like your little squad or whatever. So I wonder what like how much of like that stuff will change, let alone like the more like moment to moment game design stuff. Like what stuff is going to be missing?
Yeah, I'm
quote
very
unquote.
curious.
It could be very weird.
As I have a number of friends that are or have been really into Counter-Strike. Most of them have moved on to Tarkov and other games.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if this pulls them back. I wanna see the numbers, Valve. Show me numbers. All right, let's talk about some other things that have happened this week. Brett, you and I have been following the saga of a little game called Bleak Faith.
This is
Man, has
this
this been a
gonna be-
wild ride.
I'm
It's gonna
pretty
be a
sure-
rabbit hole.
I'm gonna let you take
I-
the lead on this one, Brett, because I
I'm
think
pretty
you've done
sure
a bit more
Brett
digging.
has like. I'm pretty sure Brett has like the string up on the wall with a little.
I have
The
the Pepe
detectable
cards
board.
Sylvia board.
everywhere.
I have the Pepe Sylvia board. It's
Oh my
behind the green
God.
screen. I have the Pepe Sylvia board. everywhere I look, it's Pepe. It's Pepe all the way down. But okay, so for a little introduction of the game, because spoiler alert, I'm going to be talking about it more later. Bleak Faith Forsaken, not Forspoken, is a game by a 3-man dev team somewhere. I'm not exactly sure if I don't think they're Russian. I think just somewhere in the Slav zone,
Eastern Europe.
Eastern Europe, more colloquially known as the Slav zone. It's like it's an open world, very atmospheric action game. I think calling it a Souls-like is almost diminutive to the game because it just does so many things different and very, very weirdly. It's been in development for like 4 years, and it has been on my friggin' radar because it has promised so many really cool, crazy things, and that art style is just friggin' awesome. And the game came out on March 11th, I think, and immediately faced like a shitload of controversy, and like the worst
lot.
kinds of
In
controversy.
a very short amount of time.
So we'll go down the different theaters of war here, starting with the most like my biggest reason why I actually ended up refunding the game, because spoiler alert, I did really like the game, but there were a lot of things coming out that were pretty, like irrefutable for the most part, pieces of evidence that one of the devs was a neo-Nazi. His username on Discord was Ubermensch42, which 1942 was not a very good year for planet Earth. And Ubermensch is, yes, a term coined by Friedrich Nietzsche, who is one of my favorite philosophers, but also was adopted by the Nazi Party in World War II to forward their extremely incorrect and stupid, horrible beliefs that you were born as the better person compared to other races on the planet. Which I think also should probably go without saying that given the chance, all of us sitting here right now would probably be happy to punch a neo-Nazi in the face. I don't
think that's a controversial statement.
I figure we just skip past saying, "Oh, we don't agree with it." No, I think we would all
weirdly
resort
enough
to doing that.
we're all
So
on
my
this
knuckles
page.
get bloody with I don't know whose.
Yeah, and the second thing to kind of bolster that was that not like the main logo for the game, but it's kind of like a repeating symbol in like loading screens, and it's the Twitter profile picture still is a symbol that looks a lot like the black sun, which is much like the swastika. It used to just be a cultural symbol that just meant whatever it used to mean. That was probably fine. And then the Nazis did the thing they always do to this day and just take that cultural symbol, literally just reverse it and use it all the time so that it now means horrible things that are bad. So I did some digging because, interestingly enough, this is it was actually very difficult to find out about, even though I think it's like the most important of the three things this game had held against it. And no one was reporting on it. It was mostly just like on forums and like subreddits and stuff. So it kind of took a bunch of really annoying digging and just like scrolling down through every comment section to see people talk about it, so I could learn more about the situation. Because what it turns out that if you're not a part of a culture that has a symbol in it, it's very easy to jump to conclusions about what that means. So basically at the end of the day, the guy whose username was a little dicey was told this and changed it, and in the past is on record in the dev Discord denouncing any like neo-Nazi far right stuff, which I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but I talk to a lot of friends that are very into the internet political spaces because I do not have the stomach for that. I don't want to deal with that.
It really
like ever.
is a shithole.
Understand.
It's horrible. But some people are like more into it than others, and they were like, yeah, if you're a neo-Nazi on the internet, like everybody knows, like you don't denounce like of those beliefs or whatever. You don't call other people stupid for being neo-Nazi. You agree with and behave like them. And the dev whose name used to be Ubermensch, I think his username is now Uberfaith42, which is that's more related to the game, and completely inoffensive as far as I know. Multiple times before this was even brought up in the past, was just like talking about how stupid neo-Nazism is because it came up in conversation because of the aforementioned symbol, which also, by the way, is unfortunately the black sun is used a lot by current Ukrainian fighting forces because we are not allowed to have any good guys in global conflict. But that's how that kind of got spread around recently, so it's fresh in people's minds. People see the Bleak Faith logo, which looks a good amount like it, but it looks arguably even
It also
more,
could just be a cool geometric symbol. Like it doesn't.
Well, it's based off of, and I could be pronouncing this wrong, a kolovrat, which is it's a very similar round symbol meant to denote a spinning wheel, which goes along with the theming of the game because that spinning wheel in like really old Eastern European Slavic culture and mythology is just like the constant churning of time and the aging and changing of everything, which just fits the vibe of the game, which aside from these two examples also did not have any really overt like, yes, this game was made by neo-Nazi. But I ended up getting rid of it when all of this was happening because I don't think anybody wants to explore a world made by a very bad person like that. And it felt very bad to play with all the drama happening. So that's why I originally got rid of it. But basically, at the end of the day, for this, to me at least, the dev has cleared his charge of being a white supremacist, and instead is just stupid. Which I'll take stupid over horrible person any day of the week.
Oh yeah.
Because I if it were me, if I were in his position, the Wikipedia page for the Kolovrat says, warning by the Anti-Defamation League, this looks a lot like a neo-Nazi symbol.
Oh no.
To his credit, they don't say which neo-Nazi symbol, but I feel like you don't have to be told which one. They're all bad. Like so I don't know, and just to keep it like that, they did end up altering the symbol. The one they have today is the one that it was altered to. Apparently there was a different looking one, but someday in the future, this is a slight tangent, someday in the future we'll do an episode or at least a topic on why everybody's switching to developer discords instead of forums is absolutely terrible for keeping up with the development of the game.
I honestly think we can do like a little bit of that right now because it is problematic for this specific situation of like
Genuinely.
There's no channel to deny what is happening that isn't your own Discord that only people that want to be there are going to be in can see. So
it's really
you
annoying.
siloed yourself.
Is it public to join? Yes, but it's less public than just like having it on.
It's also not
website
Google,
or a subreddit.
so you're not going to find information saying like, "Hey, they've responded to this" anywhere but by going on the Discord. Like, yeah, infuriating. We'll talk about it more on a future episode, but yeah. It's same problem with like Skyrim modding right now is weird because so many people just go to Discords for things. Which is bizarre. I have like a folder of Discords in my thing of just Skyrim modding servers because if I have a bug, I have to go hunt down whichever server this one mod pack belongs to and figure out who's responsible for it and be like, this is where I found it. It's
very annoying.
So much harder to do than just using the Nexus forums or any other usable thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will also say Bleak Faith had the secondary thing of AI art being used.
Yes, we have. Which this is the one thing that hasn't been resolved, and to I guess be less bad. It's not like they have like AI generated textures that the whole entire game is made out of.
Yeah,
or,
it's
like,
a couple
AI
of
generated.
images. It's nothing.
It's like there's a menu screen where you see your perks that you can select and a little thumbnail images for perks. They're like, it's super obvious that the guys just put in like Zizla Basinski paintings and just let an AI kind of go crazy with making its own, which is like it's a little weird, but part of me thinks it's a strange version of a placeholder,
I hope it's
because
placeholder.
the third thing is that the game, as someone who enjoys it, I am fully okay with admitting that the game is what I would consider unfinished. In that you can complete the game, but there's like you can open up a menu to give you a little tutorial on what a special move is. But the animation for what the special move does, that's in the middle, just says a video file missing. So it's maybe the video files are there and there's just the link up to show them there is gone, or they just don't exist yet. But I don't know what early access is in their language, but Steam does have that. So
Boy, that
it's
feels
probably...
that feels surprising.
Yeah, it's a little strange. But you know what? I think at the end of the day that it has these problems. But boy friggin' howdy, were people overreacting about the quality of the game, which I'm gonna save that for the part where we talk about the games that wowed me, unless that's literally going to happen right now.
Hey, Brett,
but-
guess what's
but-
literally going to happen
Whoa,
right
whoa,
now?
Oh my god.
Brett, are you saying the internet overreacted about
That's not
something?
possible.
And there's one more thing that I did
Why
forget
has
to
that ever
say,
happened? Why?
which is actually pretty shitty, and reveals actually like a huge gaping problem with Epic, which Epic's never had a problem
Ooh, I don't
before,
like things that are
ever.
gaping.
Well,
That's what you took from this,
the
Alex.
the thing that people reported on the most, which was strangely enough like the least important thing to me personally, I guess, because I was really focused on the whole neo-Nazi issue, was the game at a glance to people who are hyper nerds used animations that are literally one-to-one from software games. There's some from Dark Souls 3 and some from Elden Ring.
Yeah. The reason this was also
like, a
discovered is
bunch.
because the maker of the tool that people use to extract and like change animations in the Souls games for modding is the tool that these animations came from. Like he one-to-one put them in with his own animations that he extracted and is like, yep, this is the same thing.
Yeah, and he on Twitter was like, this is not, I didn't make this tool for this, it's specifically for mods, this isn't my doing, someone else is using my tool to put them on the store. And so then everyone's like, oh, well, it looks like these devs stole these animations. But then the devs were like, no, we have links to all the ones that we took. We have a record of all of them because they're all purchases from the Epic Store.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're three guys making a 3D open world action adventure game, buy some of those assets. That is okay.
That is
and
what
I'm
the
also
asset store is used for.
a bunch of
Yeah.
people were using the excuse that like the devs have clearly played these games, they should have noticed that they were gone, which I think is maybe a little bit true for some animations. Like I think the one that stands out to me is the Abyss Watchers animation that they have is on an enemy that looks exactly like the Abyss Watchers.
Yeah,
and just
which
does the
I have a
attack.
feeling they were probably like, oh, this looks a lot like the Abyss Watchers.
But that's what I
this
think
could be a
happened.
cool
I think they
reference.
thought like this is animations inspired by the games and not from the games.
Yes.
Because if you haven't one-to-one put them side by side, you're not going to remember the frame data unless you're a modder or someone who stares at it for a really long time.
I also feel like that's crazy that they have animations exactly from Elden Ring in the Epic Store.
And so
someone ripped them and put them up for sale.
Oh.
The devs went to Epic and they asked, like, we unknowingly like purchased these animations. We didn't know they were stolen. They were advertised completely differently, and they have publicly on their Discord the links to the animations in the store that they bought. So
which
they
have since been
records of all of
removed
them.
from the Epic Store. They have been
and also removed
taken
from
out.
the game.
Yeah.
And Epic responded basically saying like, "Hey, yeah, we actually don't check anything that's put on our store to see if it's copyrighted or fraudulent by anyone else other than the creator. So sorry, guys, we can't do anything."
Oh.
Which is really dumb. That's really stupid.
That's really
Damn,
bad
Epic,
to have to check.
Epic needs to
Yeah.
learn a lesson from my 6th grade math teacher. Sorry means making a change.
Yeah.
Man, imagine you're a 3-person developer making a giant open world like a Souls-like. That's hard enough on its own. Then you have to deal with all this stuff on top of that. You're just trying to release your game. All this crazy shit's going on. I can't even imagine the amount of stress that puts on.
Time
Like,
for
feel very
stigma.
bad for them.
Yeah.
But to their credit, because again, I imagine if you're developing a game, you probably keep track of all the things you purchased to make it. They've
God, I
been,
hope so.
I think like at least like 2 or 3 updates a week have been coming out since the game came out, just systematically removing not only the animations, every single thing from the Epic Store that they bought, because the devs were like, we don't want to risk this again. And in the same message that they showed what Epic's response was, they were like, because of this, just because there's no way for us to know what else has been stolen, we're getting rid of every single thing we pulled from the Epic Store. Which
Nice.
like that has to suck, because
Yeah.
you bought these things to not have to do as much work, and now they're having to do more, which really
Yeah,
blows.
like
I mean,
that
also
really is
really-
awful.
Yeah.
But also really, really good on them for their
Mm-hmm.
what's the word? Integrity.
Yeah,
Well,
because the
that's
thing
what I
is,
was-
you can. But before you go, the final thing I have to say about this before I pass it on is, I'm sure you could still find some way to be like, oh well, you don't know if they're just making this up. They could have actually like knowingly stolen it and said this. And well, the point is, it doesn't matter, because either way, all of them are getting removed from the game anyway, so it doesn't matter.
It's like I would rather err on the
It's all
side
gone.
of the devs are better than that, than like choose to believe that they're bad people and we're
Are these,
willingly like stealing things. Like I don't think that's the case.
Also, I mean, are these first-time developers, or are
I'm
these
pretty
like?
sure.
So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of this kind of stuff that for first-time developers you don't always think of the first time
Yeah.
around,
Yeah.
especially if it's just 3 people. And
Because
what
you
I was
stumble
gonna
through
say
it.
too-
Like that's what game dev
Exactly.
is stumbling through it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this too. It seems like for the most part, like you said, Brett, they're taking all of the necessary steps. Like they've run into a lot of stuff since launch, but it seems like for the most part, all of it's being addressed properly. They're going to all of the right people. They're making all of the right calls and everything. So, good on them. Again, 3-person development team. It's very impressive. Not just the product itself, but also how they've been able to react to all of this in such a
Genuinely.
professional manner.
Speaking of, do we know what the 3 people are? Is it like designer, artist, programmer?
Good question. I actually don't know. And in the span of sifting through all this really annoying drama, the team was not talked about almost at all, which is really stupid, because I've only done research on this part to make sure that I morally made a good decision by continuing to play and enjoy the game.
I'd like to find out what their composition
Yeah,
is.
and
'cause
I
it's always
waited
interesting
to
seeing the
for
low
this to get
in
resolved.
composition.
I'm gonna look it up while we're talking, Alex, to try and
Yeah.
find out if there's any other information. But
They
yeah, I
published
was
it
waiting.
themselves, too. Wow.
Yeah, the self-published
Sorry.
indie game. I was waiting to play this game because right before I was about to pick it up, all the neo-Nazi accusations were being thrown around, and I was like, okay, let's
Maybe let the
Maybe
jets
wait.
cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I would be feeling fine to pick this up now, because like they're doing everything right in response to this, aside from it being locked to like, don't just put your responses on Discord. They have a Twitter page. They should use that to like throw some of this stuff. I think especially the like neo-Nazi thing is just shoot that down, like hard shutdown.
Yeah.
In the public thing and not just the Discord. But yeah,
But it's like you said, Ryan. You stumble through a lot of this stuff, and sometimes, unfortunately for these guys, it's a little bit more public than others.
Yeah, especially if there's a
Yeah.
language barrier. Like that's also, I think, a big.
Because these kind of things happen all the time, and it's kind of sometimes a lot of it is just behind the scenes, and like the general public doesn't really know about it. And sometimes, like this, it becomes really, really public. So it just, this happens a lot more. This kind of thing happens a lot more often than you would think. It's just some other companies are better about keeping it on the down low.
Yeah, it's a lot more public.
And very, very public. This is where the YouTube thumbnail gets made of my face going like, oh, with like in big yellow impact text with thick black outlines. Asmongold wrong. Because the big publicity that the game got is that Asmongold picked it up, and claimed that it sucks. When in reality, I'm gonna be honest, I think he does because the game is not nearly as problematic.
Look,
as
Asmongold says that
make it
about
out to
every
be.
game, and it's part of the bit.
Just being clear.
The problem is some people that watch them don't know it's a bit.
Yes.
Just being clear, this Asmongold we're talking about is Asmongold the streamer.
Yeah, Asmongold the streamer who
streamer,
hasn't
yes.
streamed on the main channel Asmongold in many months and is now streaming on Zakrar. Just to clarify about Asmongold.
Okay. Weird.
I will say one of the perks of working on a game is watching Asmongold die to mechanics.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I
must
did find
make
some
Asmongold
details
suffer.
about the team. Bleak Faith
yeah.
was a Kickstarter game back in, I think, 2018. I want to say this is when this
Sounds right.
happened. And originally the release date for full release was estimated to be 2020. Haha, pandemic happened.
Yeah.
So
We do a little trolling.
it also
That's
is
what
one of
we
the
like to call a
Kickstarter games
ha-ha
that
pandemic.
only just barely hit its goal. So it was a $30,000 goal. They got 31,000. So
Oh.
just barely passed it.
Wow.
Which I think is cool that it did get made and published. So the developers I see here are the lead developer, artist, and writer, and sound designer is one of them. And then the second developer is the co-lead, who's a programmer. They also had 2 composers helping out. So that's the team at this time. It likely could have expanded because I don't know if this is reflective of the current team, but that seems like at least the starting group.
Because usually with indie teams, it's like there's like a core team, and then they consider like the like with like Signalis or the Hollow Knight or something, they consider like the composers like as their own thing. I remember seeing that like they took on a third guy later in development, so it's probably like the 2 original leads that you mentioned, and then they took on some other third guy.
Yeah, third guy, which I would probably hazard a guess as another programmer or designer, just someone who can do implementation, because it seems like that's where they would need an extra person. And Brett, I have a fun thing here that we can do, a fun little game we can play, because they have a list of stretch goals that they didn't hit any of.
Oh.
But I want to get your gut reaction to things here, because I actually think there's a few things here that made it into the game, if I've seen footage correctly. One, the first stretch goal at $50,000, which was not hit, was companions.
No.
Yeah, I feel like that's
I think
a big call.
they have something like that, because you can summon like a guy to help you fight for a little while if you spec into it. So they kind of have not like a story.
I assume they're
like,
not
written
fully
by-
voiced companions, which is what
No,
this
they're
claims they
not.
would have had.
Yeah.
Base upgrades. You can upgrade your base visually.
Oh,
That's a
I
cool
don't know if you
idea.
can do that.
That's
Yeah, it's
neat.
pretty sick.
The next one is dismemberment, which I think is in the game, right?
Ooh.
I think so. I want us for some enemies.
Huh.
It is.
I
They
definitely
at
have
least
seen enemies
jib
get their
really
heads lopped
good.
off.
Yeah.
There is a second thing under dismemberment, is that you can lose limbs and keep fighting, which I don't think that happened, but that's very
Oh.
cool.
That would be really
That'd be
funny
really cool.
and infuriating.
Tis but a scratch.
That's one of those ideas that sounds fun, and then I think
You
you would
like
try
throw
and be like,
on-
oh no.
Yeah.
Your arm gets lobbed off, and you attach like a prosthetic arm. You just pull it out of your backpack and just
Oh,
attach
no,
it.
no prosthetic. You just better
That'd
be
be
dual wielding.
awesome. Oh,
Yeah, you're
that'd be
dual wielding with
awesome,
one
actually.
hand.
Your like backpack is full of just prosthetic limbs. You just
Modular crafting? Does modular crafting make you excited, or are you glad that's not in the game?
They do have crafting. But
Ooh.
it's not like you don't really have to care. It's like, oh, I killed a couple guys. Now I have enough things to make more healing potions, because guys don't drop healing potions; they drop things to make healing potions. So it's kind of like it's a little bit like Elden Ring, where you don't really have to.
Yeah, this
think
is
about it too
suggesting that
much.
you would craft your weapons and equipment out of hundreds of individual pieces to create personalized looks.
Thank God they didn't do that.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Thank God they didn't do that.
Then the last goal at $200,000 was a PvP duel arena.
Thank God they didn't do that.
It also sounds like a nightmare. I think a lot of people underestimate how awful networking is to add to a game.
Did someone
Yeah.
say netcode?
Well, this is prime Slav jank, so I feel like it would just be terrible.
God.
The combat is weird enough.
People
to
find a way
have
to
two
physics
people-
everyone in one move.
Yeah.
Well, and networking is one thing, but then also making sure that there's some modicum of balance.
Yeah, like any balance whatsoever.
Ugh.
That's the Bleak Faith train. Aside from all the news, Brett, have you been enjoying Bleak Faith?
So this is I'll start the games that wowed us train now that the Bleak Faith specific train is over. This game did wow me, because even though I was expecting for it to be really cool, when you learn that it's a 3-person dev team, I feel like you got to kind of reel those expectations, and if you know what video games are, because it's a big enough undertaking for like 100-person dev team to make a really good game, let alone just 3 guys working off probably a budget that got stretched to bare threads because of how much longer the development had to be. But when you start up the game, and Ryan, I need to ask you if
Yeah.
you know what the manga, it's spelled blame exclamation point, but it's pronounced
I do know
blam.
of it.
Blam. I'm just gonna say blame because blam sounds stupid.
It sounds really dumb, yeah.
Is a manga that takes place like a gazillion years in the future.
I wouldn't blame you for that.
Yeah. A gazillion years in the future, where humanity has progressed so far that everyone's basically dead, and it's because we decided to solve the overpopulation problem by making nanomachines that just build more structures for people to live in. Great. Forgot the off switch though, so there's one structure that covers possibly the entire solar system and keeps growing. And it's just
solar system?
absolutely
cool.
horrifying with how bleak it is, and how it is so beyond cyberpunk that it is just it's depressing to think about. And Bleak Faith makes me think of that, because you go through the game world is called the Omni structure. And it made an excuse for weird Soviet bloc looking brutalist architecture and sci-fi and fantasy stuff to all be mushed in the same place, which kind of goes with the Wheel of Time symbol that I was talking about earlier, because things have just gone on for so long that everything seems like it's just mushed together, is what I've been able to piece through the 3.5 hours I've played of it.
Ooh.
And I just the vibes are immaculate, because you're going through this crazy open world with just towers that ascend way past the view fog that you can see them, and even further down below into the void. There's swimming, there's climbing, there's jumping,
Nice.
there's little inklings of what appears to be Shadow of the Colossus-esque jumping onto the back of large enemies and stabbing weak points until they die.
Is this climbing designated points like Uncharted, Horizon Zero Dawn type
Yes.
stuff, or is it Breath of the Wild type? Okay.
Yeah, because I think if they had Breath of the Wild type climbing, it would just be a little too much to wrangle in, because a lot of them are they're not like mountains where it's difficult to climb them. They're like buildings, so there's a lot of things you could grab onto. But yeah, the exploration so far has been incredible. Where we're just this looks like a small gap I could slightly fit into, and there'll just be a whole little mini area in there. The first
Very
boss, I was like, oh man, I'm having a lot of trouble. I guess these guys that were complaining about it in the Steam comments were right. There's an undodgeable attack. Wait a second. There's a jump button.
That I did see that Steam review and had a visceral reaction to it.
Because I was like, because I wanted to be mad at him, but then I got to that part, and like the attack is like a ground slam, and all like the little pebbles and
little
rocks on the
wave
ground
that comes
up,
out,
and yeah, and you just take damage if you're standing. I was like, shit, this guy's right. I don't know what I'm blocking. I tried parrying it because you could parry, and I thought it would be funny to try it.
He's got the
thinking
horror
it was, like,
slam.
AoE is.
There's a jump button on the controller that I have mapped to A because people were complaining the controls were bad. First of all, they weren't. So I don't know what people were on. If they were expecting some magical control scheme that would let them win everything. And also, if you didn't like them, every single button is rebindable, and they have like the minutia, like the dead zones and stuff in the settings. You could change them if you cared to play the game for more than 30 minutes.
It sounds like a nice bit of accessibility.
It's crazy that you can just, I don't like the jump button not being A. Wow, you can do that yourself, and it feels fine. So I did that, and I think like beat the boss on the next attempt. Because I figured out a way to dodge the thing, and I was like, this is great. Not only do I have the feeling of beating a FromSoft boss, which is like that feeling of overcoming adversity, I also overcame that one guy and all the idiots that agreed with him who are now wrong.
The biggest boss of all, the Steam comments section.
Exactly. It's like the part in Nier where you shoot the credits and you get help by the community, except it's the opposite, and you're hurting the community by winning.
Yeah.
But yeah, and even afterward, like I found the hub area and just like the music that plays around it, and there's a weird robot lady that gives you perks because you don't level up, you get like perks, and it's not like, well, there's some that's like, oh, you get 10% more health, this is great. And there's just one of the first ones you can get is just automatic vampirism on every single weapon you hold, so you just get health steal, and suddenly the fact that you can only carry 2 health potions doesn't matter anymore, because you just heal when you hit things.
Yeah, Brett, this is very important. Please tell me this robot lady is less sexualized than the ones in Atomic Heart.
I feel like that's
by
a very
far.
low bar. I think that's like
you will probably
I
just
don't
be
want it
attracted to
starting
her.
a trend.
No, yeah, she's not going to be starting any trend. If you well, I mean, you might be, because we'll find out later this year. If you end up being attracted to the lady in Mortal Shell, then you will also be attracted to the lady in Bleak Faith. But that's more of a strange masked robot lady thing, and not because they're actually sexualized.
Thank you for bringing us onto this subject matter, Alex. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really glad we're
Very
having a
important
discussion
to talk
about whether or not you would date the robot waifu.
We've covered so much ground in this episode. It's incredible.
But talking about neo-Nazis, and now we're at sexualized robot ladies.
You know, we've been talking about dating robot waifus. I feel like we got to shout out Doki Doki Literature Club, even if none of us have played it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's just a shout out we got to fit here.
Subject matter.
I think robot waifus and AI waifus are something different. Is she AI or is she code? That's something. That's
Well,
I don't know. I
System
haven't
Shock
played the
is
game.
coming out later this year, so we might find out.
Because you do also kill her, which I think could be a real a bummer of sorts.
But you can make choices. Maybe you can find a way to undo it and date.
Wait, the sequel is coming out?
We gotta date, Alex. Alex, dating is the core of every game. If it doesn't have a dating simulator, what are you doing?
It's like, can you pet the dog? But that's not a good thing to think about ever. If you think that about every game you play, you might need to see somebody. I think that's probably without question.
If you're thinking about that every time a game comes out, then you've spent too much time on Reddit.
Yeah, you are
sure.
terminally online for sure.
Let's move away from the dating simulator discussion.
Relationships in Diablo 1.
Never.
I'll talk to some people. All right.
Oh my god.
Let's talk about more games that surprised us. I'm gonna pull out a weird one.
Oh, okay.
I got a weird one that's, I think, a little quick one, but also a game I think most people forgot about for justifiable reasons, which is Scarlet Nexus.
Yes.
All right. I'm gonna say the word Scarlet Nexus.
I remember hearing about that once or twice.
You know what? I've been slowly in that game's orbit for a while, kind of looking like, I don't know, this looks kind of cool. Yeah, I might check it out. I don't know.
Yeah. See, So
Hope
I
it's blocked
haven't
by the
finished the
sun.
game, not for any like real reason. It's more just I there was a bunch of other stuff going on. I got far enough in the story. I'd played like 20 hours of it. I was like, I'm good. I got what I wanted out of this game, but I did really enjoy it because I think it had the first really good implementation of DualSense on the PS5 with like really cool haptic stuff when you're doing like you have like psychic powers and telekinesis and whatnot, and there was really good feedback for when you're using those, and the triggers would do like crazy vibrations to show that you're like powering up, pulling something to you. Really fun. Aside from just the DualSense stuff, I think the combat surprised me with being legitimately very enjoyable, but not like most other things I had played, to where it did feel kind of like a character action game, but there was more going on with like the environment, because you were using a lot of like calling objects to you and then throwing them at things and doing more telekinetic stuff. And the different weapons were very fun to use. So I think it was a very fun first sort of launch window game that has been forgotten, but had a lot of good ideas that I haven't seen in other things since.
Yeah.
And I certainly thought it was going to be bad.
There you go.
You were ready with it. You had something.
Yes, I was ready. I'm gonna put two in the same spot because they're both in the same genre, and so I kind of want to talk about both of them. Game that surprised me mostly because it's a genre that I had never played before, and now it's a genre that I'm actually quite interested in. First, Hades. Completely, because I had like kind of dabbled in roguelike type games before, but Hades got me hook, line, and sinker. I was in it after the first run. I was like, okay, this is different. this feels
You're
feels
seeing
different
why
to me.
other people are into it and like
Yes,
understanding.
but it also I didn't expect the narrative hook to be what it was, which is I loved. I said this before. I love the way that they've incorporated the genre of like Souls-likes of like dying over and over, not Souls-like, roguelikes of like dying over and over and over again, and they've actually like that's part of the story.
Souls
You
likes are
die a
like that
bunch of
too,
times.
Wyatt.
Yeah.
That's not just
Sure.
roguelikes. That was an accurate
No,
statement.
but like the narrative kind of embraces the fact that you die constantly, and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
hey,
it's
what's
part
up?
of the story and it pushes it forward.
It's so funny. It's like you're fighting a boss 1 minute, and then like 20 minutes later, you like go back to the House of Hades, and then that same boss is like, hey, you want a drink? Like it's such a casual thing, and it was so.
I'm real
it was
tired
so
of your dad telling me to
fascinating.
beat the crap out of you. You want to grab something to eat?
Yeah, no, it was super cool. And then the game keeps. I think I've said this before, but like I played that game for so many hours, and it just introduced a new boss out of nowhere, like a new boss that's going to be incorporated into every run now, which is nuts.
Did you piss off the shopkeeper?
No, the shopkeeper and I were on good terms. But then
Real
the
tight.
second game in this roguelike journey, to be honest, when I heard about how hard Returnal was going to be, I was like, oh no. I don't think I'm gonna.
Not going to be a Wyatt game, you know?
This is not going to be a Wyatt game. Turns out, I am part of the 15% of players that's actually finished and beaten the full game, and I wear that as a source of pride on my chest because I nope out of difficult games so quickly. It's not my cup of tea, but I stuck with it. And to be honest with you, I'm still kind of figuring out why. I mean, it's a good game. It's a tight gameplay.
It feels really good to play. That might be part of it, is
Yes.
that the feedback is
but-
really good.
But I can say that about a lot of difficult games that I dropped just because it was too difficult for my taste. But this one, I think maybe because it was a shooter, so maybe it just that just kind of clicks in my brain a lot more.
Sometimes the brainworms just win. Sometimes they just get activated by some random thing. You can't exactly explain it. It just
I-
It's also,
pulls you in.
Returnal had a lot of tentacles, too. And you got
Yeah.
past the tentacles.
Tentacles gross me out, and I
We
want to
cover
barf.
so much ground in one episode. It's incredible.
No, everyone goes there whenever
We
I
truly
mention
are
this.
men of the world.
This is ridiculous. Every time I mention that I don't like tentacles and I think they're gross, that's all people can like think of. It's weird. I don't like the way they move.
No wonder
It's
this guy
weird,
doesn't like animation.
wavy. But no, those are two games in a similar genre. Very, very similar reasons as to why I was surprised that I like them so much. But it's introduced me to a whole new type, a whole new structure that
That's fun.
every time I see the roguelike tag now, I'm like, oh, what is this? Tell me more.
All right, you had that was your roguelike tangent. Wyatt, any other things that Alex or Brett has to bring up?
I have something that was so I'm pretty sure we were all insanely pleasantly surprised by Hi-Fi Rush.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely, which we have
with the
talked
very
about
nature
and
of
we're
it
going to
being
continue to talk about.
with the
Yes.
very nature of it being a shadow drop, less of it being something that we didn't
Yeah.
think we'd enjoy at first.
Mhm.
But another game somewhat similar to Hi-Fi Rush did that to me previously. This was one of our Game Pass games. The one that I chose because I thought I wouldn't really be into that sort of thing. Was Hellsinger.
Very good.
Because
Yeah, Metal Hellsinger.
the only previous rhythm game I played before that was Rhythm Heaven on the DS.
Which, you know,
And it
that's a
proved-
great bar. That is a very
That is
good
a-
bar to have.
Yeah.
but it proved to me I did not have rhythm.
That's
I see.
Child.
I
And
see.
then when I play something when it has guns in it that I shoot to the rhythm, I suddenly do.
magical.
And just yeah, I wasn't going into Metal Hellsinger ready to hate it, but I was just like I'm probably gonna like the music, but I'm not gonna have a good time with the gameplay with my inability to tap on beat. The game forced me into being able to tap on beat.
Nice.
It
You
was
learned
too
your way through it.
enjoyable not to. Yeah.
Well, because part of it, I think part of it with the games like Hi-Fi Rush and Hellsinger that are adapting action games into rhythm games, action games kind of have an inherent rhythm that you get into when you play them, regardless
Especially
of the
with
music.
combos
Like,
when you get your hang of
yeah,
that.
you learn
It's-
when to time button presses, and you can then learn either through the music or through regular gameplay, and then I think at that point it'll click, and you're like, okay, this is the timing that I should do.
Yeah, it's far more of a natural pairing than it would seem on the surface. Much like Electro Swing, it's two things that don't seem like they would go well together at all, and then in practice, it actually works much better than you think it does. Than you think it would.
Yeah. All right, that's a good set of things. So I want to talk about a few other games that I have on lists here that I don't know if I'm the only one who's played some of these. I feel like some of you have played at least a couple of these. So if I say a name that you have also played, feel free to chime in. I think first one that was pretty universally surprising is Outer Wilds.
Oh. From what
I
I've been
want
able
to bring up
play
Outer
with.
Wilds because I think this game gets a lot of credit. I wouldn't call it underrated. I think it gets all the
Absolutely
praise that
not.
it deserves and deserves
Yeah.
all the praise that it gets. But it was very surprising at the time because it didn't have a ton of hype around it. It was really just a small like student project that had been blown up into this full release. And I think it coming out and having that impact was really special and proving that games can work without progression in the traditional sense and instead being like knowledge based is a really, really good thing to prove. And I'm very excited to see what that team does in the future.
Yeah.
Do I get to tell my Outer Wilds story again?
Absolutely, Alex.
You want?
Sure. I have tried to play this game a couple of times. Really, yeah, that's kind of all. That's kind of all. I'll. So I was. So we downloaded it. I was finally looking forward to. We didn't do this for Game Pass at all, did we?
No.
No.
So
So,
it-
I
I
think
it
it
was-
was
left
off of
Game Pass. Yeah.
I remember it was on Game Pass when I did download it because
Same.
that's how I got the access to it. And that's where one of the issues arose, I'm assuming. But so I get into the game, very just overall a nice little, very vibey atmosphere going on in the base. It's like, all right, the rocket, the mission. Yeah, I don't remember too much of the plot. It's been a while. But I'm wandering around the camp talking to my fellow alienoids. And I go up to this little tutorial that you can skip. That's a little fun interactive minigame that is flying the RC ship. That I would learn from other people later is the minigame for how you fly the actual ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty fun. I was messing around with it. I see the geysers in the middle of the camp. I'm just like, I want to fly. I want to fly the little ship into one of those. And I try a couple of times after getting the hang of it. I manage it. It goes down into one of the geysers. It gets shot up so far into the sky by a blast of water. So I go down to check out what like what the geysers look like more close up, because there's some platforms near them. And I see down deep down below, through you can see pretty far down into one of the geysers.
No, you can see all
And
the
there's
way
a-
down.
And there's a there's a little glowing red light that I needed to find out what was about.
Of course.
So, not knowing the physical stats of this alien, I jump in, not knowing that I just could not breathe underwater at all,
No.
and I die very quickly. And then it gives me a canonical game over screen,
Mhm.
and it doesn't let me restart the game.
Yeah, it sounds like an Xbox Game Pass early days
So that's
bug.
it.
Yeah.
That was my one life in the game. My adventure is canonically dead.
Which
Forever.
is really funny when you consider how the game is supposed to work with the time loop of you
Yeah.
not being able to die.
Even
that
after
is
uninstalling
awesome.
and reinstalling the game and wiping my data for
Yeah.
it.
It's really
'Cause
funny.
I'm
I
not
will-
able to restart it.
I would wager to say that most people also died in the beginning camp when they're just like experimenting and figuring out the game, and including me. That did not happen. Did not happen to me. It did, obviously, because I ended up finishing the game.
Did you go down
Uh,
into the geyser? Was there anything in there that you could find out?
You can't without a spacesuit on, because you can't swim or like scan anything because you just don't have any of your tools. But that was definitely one of the things. Like, I will come back here later when I am smarter, and then I came back there like 60 hours later because I forgot,
Whoa.
because there's just too much other stuff to do.
Oh
That
my
game
God.
is so friggin' good. That game feels like you're like an 8-year-old and you just barely understand space, but they gave you a spaceship anyway, and the rules are conveniently simple enough for you to learn easily and not destroy your imagination of how everything could possibly work. That game is like probably one of the greatest games of all time. It's really, really
Yeah.
freaking good.
It's great. I would love for you to play it again at some point, Alex. Probably on a console, I think, would be the right place to pick it up, so you don't run into
Or
the PC
Steam.
problems. You know, I don't want to trust it. Outer Wilds is one of those games. If something breaks, you're gonna have a bad time. So let's just put it on the platform where things aren't gonna break. Hopefully. All right. That's our first big game. I also want to mention the sister game to Outer Wilds that is completely unrelated, called Outer Worlds.
Mhm.
If people remember Outer Worlds, and I know
I do.
Barely.
the opinion on Outer Worlds has, I don't know if soured is the right term, but it hasn't held the same regard that a lot of Obsidian games do end up holding, including more modern Obsidian games like Pentiment. So,
It wouldn't be my
Grounded, too.
Spacer's Choice.
which is really funny because the Spacer's Choice edition of the game, that's like the next gen update, which wasn't handled by Obsidian, is
clear.
not great. It like
Yeah.
actively makes the game worse a little bit. I think it did get
Oh, what?
patched. I think it got patched to not do that anymore, and it actually is just fine now. But like,
What did it make worse?
it like had a really
Performance.
weird color filter. The performance was bad. It did a bunch
God.
of weird changes.
The game is already
patched
ugly
it,
as sin.
to
So
be a little bit nicer, but
So I've only played the game through once.
Yeah.
I do plan on going back very soon to do another playthrough, because I'm itching for more. But I remember really enjoying my first
Yeah, like,
playthrough.
the reason I bring this up as a game that surprised me is I don't think Outer Worlds in and of itself is the surprising thing, but rather how much I want more games like it to
Yeah.
exist, even if they're not amazing. Like, even if I don't have an incredible time, I do really enjoy playing that style of game. Just a first-person adventure RPG where you actually have a lot of
That's-
character choices to make.
Yeah, that's nice and short, but it has really branching
Yeah,
paths.
companions to get and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a reason like Fallout 4 I think disappointed a lot of people is it fell short in the RPG part, and Outer Worlds felt like yeah, it's not necessarily better than Fallout 4, but it had more of what I enjoyed about the past Fallout games, which was nothing to do with the setting or anything, but everything to do with just how particularly 3 and New Vegas were structured and the like options you had. Even if they're fake options, they give you a lot of personality. Because the thing that I loved in Outer Worlds is I played my first playthrough most of the way through on just a regular standard like mercenary type character, just guns blazing, classical. Wanted to play the game, so just like I'm just gonna go on the easy build, which is probably just guns. So I did that, and then my second playthrough, I went in with a character with minimum intelligence, and I wanted to do like
yes.
my character inspiration was basically Andre the Giant, of being just a gentle giant kind of thing, and the game like catered to that, which was really cool. And I was just glad to see a game that had that type of decision making, even if it didn't really change my experience very much. Just the different dialogue and reactions that could be had with it were really, really cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, it's been a while. I think I played it when it first came out, but I remember just the characters were great. I really liked the story. I thought the really like funny kind of commentary, like capitalism commentary, was really funny.
That was my favorite part.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was so well handled. And I was also I thought the combat was fun. I know it's not like, the best first person shooter combat out there. Like,
But there's enough there to keep you interested. So,
but it was for the type of game it is absolutely acceptable.
and some of the guns are
Well
really
within-
fun. They have some like really cool.
Yes.
Oh
looking
yeah,
guns.
those special end game weapons. Like there's like the really, I don't know, I don't remember too much, but I remember feeling like they were pretty decently interesting quests for end game weapons. Like there is an orbital strike laser cannon that you can get. There's
Yeah,
like
I've
a
been wanting to go
rocket-propelled
do the
hammer.
DLC too, because I've heard the DLC is actually really good.
I heard the first DLC was like only okay, but the second one was really good.
Yeah, I heard the first DLC
Oh.
had like 1 or 2 really good quests, but it was very short. Was the complaint that I was hearing a lot, but I could be wrong.
The
Haven't played
DLCs that I know of is one of them is like a
Paralon
moon
Gorgon and
casino?
Murder on Eridanos.
Ah.
Got like the murder mystery theming, which I really, really love. It's just a very fun theme.
That's gonna be an absolutely bomber quest for that type of game too.
Yeah.
Love, like one of my favorite things in RPGs is murder mystery quests. That's my favorite quest in Oblivion is the Dark Brotherhood one for the dinner party, things like that.
For sure. I do think it's just super interesting, especially just having more. I think Obsidian is really good at writing quests that, even if you're doing very basic things, feel fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me is where you want to hit for that type of writing, where you have to get the content done, but you have really, really talented writers. Might as well go for it and try some interesting things.
Yeah. And let's also not forget that game was announced and released at the best possible time that it could have been announced and released, if you remember, because it's the build up, the wait for this was around the same time period as Fallout 76.
Oh,
This was a very like even if the game isn't like a masterpiece by people playing it like today or whatever, like it was definitely a very like, hello, we are Obsidian. How the fuck are you today, motherfucker? Like it is very like we are here in the industry doing stuff on our own, and if you don't like it, go play Skyrim again, dork.
Well, I think I distinctly remember, now that I'm thinking about it, SkillUp's review of this. He's like, this is the RPG chicken soup. It does not have a ton of like thrills in it. It doesn't have like a ton of like. It's not going to be the greatest RPG, but it is exactly what you're looking for.
If you played everything else, it's just more of the same, and that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. Especially because, like you said, Ryan, we don't get enough of these anymore, because Bethesda for the past couple of years has not been too interested in making that kind of game.
Well, it's just like, it's not just a Bethesda thing. It's a thing of like these first-person games, especially first-person games where you can interact with almost everything, are incredibly difficult to make. They need so much optimization and whatnot to even function. That, to be honest, I'm surprised many Bethesda games are as relatively minor in the bug department as to what they could be. Right? I'm not saying they don't have a lot of bugs, because they have tons of bugs, but I could see so much worse happening. Yeah. And it's why things like the Oblivion, Skyrim have the like timed chests. A lot of people never worry about, but your chest will like vanish after a certain amount of time and then reappear to refresh it, so the game's not constantly tracking everything. Otherwise, it breaks. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff on the back end with those games, and it's why we don't get many more. And I'm very excited to see Avowed when we get more of that game, which has vanished from the planet.
Fingers crossed that means they're hard at work on it.
Yeah.
Add it to the list of Microsoft exclusives that have just completely evaporated.
Poofed into the ether. Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, all right. I'm going to talk about a game that I just picked up yesterday, which is... These three know exactly what I'm talking about, because I pinged our Discord for them 3 a.m. a bunch with it, which is Spacebourne 2. So this is a game that has been picking up a little bit of traction. It's by a single developer, just one dude named Burak Dabak, one dude or woman, I don't know, who makes this game. They made Spacebourne 1 a few years ago, released in 2018. It's sitting at mostly positive on Steam, which for an indie space game is pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Most of them sit at negative. And yeah, I have been playing a little bit of Spacebourne 2. It's an early access. It came out in early access in February of this year. Since the entrance of early access, again, almost exactly a month ago, it entered early access. Since then, it has gotten a ton of new content, including like planetary raids and a ton of other weird faction mechanics that you can do.
Yeah, Ryan, by the way, I will be getting this at some point so we can run on top of a spaceship together.
Oh, it's not multiplayer. This is a single player game. Yeah, it's a single player game. This is a single player RPG.
This is playing a lot more to my
Yeah, this is not like a multiplayer Star Citizen situation. It's a single player RPG. But the whole thing is, in this game, you're playing essentially a person that starts out on foot on a planet. You have a junky little ship that you can get on, and you explore fully third person on foot. Run to your ship, you get in. It has a really cool taking off sequence. There's really good UI, which is astounding to me that the UI, especially for the ship, is just very good. Not necessarily flow-wise, but just it gets the fantasy across of it being like a HUD on the ship. Because there's a thing when you like align with a planet to port to and basically warp to. In something like Elite Dangerous, there's a ton of like extra stuff you have to do. Here, you just press the thruster button once you're aligned. Well, there's a really cool like spiraling out like targeting eye thing that comes out, and then like a line extends. It says there's juice. There's juice in the animation of the UI to warp to a different area, which to me is like, how is that in an early access build already? It just already looks very good.
With the space traversal, Ryan, this is an unfortunate question that I have to ask.
Yeah.
What's the likelihood for motion sickness with the space travel?
I actually don't think the space travel will mess you up. I think the on foot will mess you up, because there's a lot of...
Oh, no.
I think the thing that will get you have grav boots. So the way you move around on foot is you have running, like standard third person moving and walking and running and shooting. And then you have hover flight with a jetpack, which you are often going in and out of. So you're not going to be like in one mode for too long, because the hover flight is very fast, but you can't shoot while you're doing it. So you'll be kind of swapping between the two to get around. And in the hover flight mode, the camera is a little wacky. It does a lot of shaking. You can turn it off, so you might be okay. But yeah, I would definitely check that if you pick it up within the refund window. Check that you are able to play it without feeling super motion sick. But yeah, there's tons of cool things in this. It does basically everything that Starfield has claimed it's going to do already in an early access indie game made by one person. You can seamlessly enter and exit planets. I think there's some trickery behind the scenes of it's not actually like, when you enter a planet, you aren't actually entering that relative space point, but it fakes it well enough that I don't know for certain.
I was gonna say, but it's still super impressive that it pulls off being
seamless. It pulls off the fantasy, which I think is exactly where it wants to be. Of when you're entering and exiting, it feels good enough to like get the point across.
So there are no excuses, Todd.
No excuses, Todd.
Someone's already done. In fact, hire this guy. He would probably
Yeah.
be a really big help to your team.
There's like full
God, what if they-
dogfighting. There's capital ships you can raid and like fight on. There's station raids. So one of the first like tutorial missions teaches you how to like get out of your ship into your hover suit and jet to like a station, get out, activate your grab boots, and then go murder everyone in the station.
Okay.
Ooh.
It's funny that
Love
that
it.
it's funny that earlier I had brought up the whole like Fallout 76 and Outer Worlds
Yeah.
thing. Because like, what if this happens again? Starfield comes out, complete mess. Everyone's
Oh
like,
my
oh, go
God.
check out this Spacebourne 2 thing. It's exactly what we're all
man.
looking for.
It's wild.
Oh no.
I mean, the thing is, it's a
no.
Eurojank game for sure. Like there is a lot of jank in this game. It's a lot of things are unfinished because it's early access. There's like
In the
menu
screenshot that you
screens that
posted,
don't exist.
in the screenshot that you posted, I swear to God, I thought I was looking at Master Chief at one of those armor sets.
Yeah, they're probably Unreal assets. I would bet. So I think it's just really impressive that it functions at any level. There are dungeons in this game. They're not very good, but they're gonna get better. So I'm excited to see what they
Must
look
be a
like when they're
Valheim.
done. The planetary exploration is super cool because you can fly down to a planet, just explore around. You'll find like a random dude in a shack who's been shot by bandits, who then gives you a quest to go kill those bandits in their cave after they die. And so you go on the planet, call up a hover bike, and run over to where they are, and then murder
Ooh.
everyone there. And you have a little
Hover
dungeon.
bike?
Yeah, you have a little hover
Say
bike.
no more.
You run over to them. You have actual companion characters in this game. There are actual companion characters that you can manage and have as wingmen when you're flying.
When you're
What?
flying,
That's-
ooh.
They'll fly with you. Like I don't understand how this game exists. Legitimately, I fully do not understand. I've played about 4 hours of it now, and it works. Like that's the astounding thing is that it functions. It doesn't always function well. There's definitely moments where there have been weird things that happen. Right now, if you get interdicted by space pirates, they might be 40 levels above you if the tutorial, because the tutorial sends you to an area that's like super high level for a little bit. But it's right after you would have gotten a bunch of loot, and pirates will raid you based on how much loot you have.
No.
And so if you get unlucky and get raided there, they're going to be 40 levels above you, and there is nothing you can do. You will just have to reload the save because
Damn.
they turn off your warp drive. Even if you run away, it doesn't turn back on, and so you can't flee. Which I assume is a bug, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that like does really work. And yeah, it's just astounding that it exists. There's tons of factions you can join. You can join all sorts of guilds that have different types of missions. Where I joined the Mercenaries Guild, and I can go, which is focused on the third-person shooting. So you like fly to a bunch of different planets and go and like steal data to upload to
Also-
competitors and whatnot.
Also, another big thing that I'm hoping for that this breaks like the Elder Scrolls mode. This isn't a Bethesda game, but please, I don't want to end up the guild leader at the end of the quest.
You do start a faction in this, but it's like the story premise is this is actually a sequel to Spacebourne 1, which I don't know the story of, but I understand that apparently the main character of that is like your parent.
Huh.
And you're like their child if you like a couple decades later having to like pick up the rebellion that they had made, and you
that's
get the
cool.
option to like reform it and do a bunch of cool missions and like empire building stuff, which I have not gotten anywhere near. But yeah, it's just bonkers that it functions. I don't believe this game is real. I don't know what will convince me it's real until I've played much more of it. But
I just spent $20 on something that might not be real, so I hope it is.
yeah, I mean, I'm
You
excited
just got it
to know what you
tomorrow.
think of this game, Brett, because it really is Eurojanky, but there is a shotgun in it that they give you in the tutorial that I loved so much.
Yeah, you
said it
mentioned
was
that it
one
has
of the best shotguns.
It's just a random shotgun that completely incinerates people when you shoot them with it, and it has one of the
Good.
chunkiest sounds I've ever heard for a shotgun.
I'd hope so,
was
because
incredible.
there are like AAA products that I strain to call games that have bad shotguns.
And there's like a bunch of
after
weapon
Quake.
types too. Like I've picked up railguns, I've picked up sniper rifles, I've picked up pulse rifles, I've picked up auto rifles. There's all sorts of stuff. A lot of them have like the same weapon model, but they have like different UI art, so I assume they're making models for them,
Plays better stuff.
which is really cool. Yeah, I just even the fact that this works was bizarre to me. It also looks good. Like that's the other thing. This game looks good in motion, And like you can see the seams and like where it kind of fails when you're doing certain things. Like it's clear the on planet stuff. You can get some really janky rendering. Like there are big like mega block cities that can spawn on planets that are basically like the planet hubs. Those don't really have anything on them right now. They're just kind of cool architecture. But if you get out of your ship and walk around them, you kind of the illusion shatters a little bit, and you're like, oh, this is not like a city with infrastructure. This is just a bunch of AIs walking around in a little square. But stuff on the stations looks incredible. People will get up and like move around them and go interact with things and like sit down, and there's a lot of like interactability with the AI there, which is really cool. So it's super fun. I have not been this impressed by a thing in a while. I want to caveat that with this is a single person indie production. So your expectations need to be at the level of single person indie production so that they can be exceeded.
Ryan,
Can
I already got motion sick just looking at the video of the dogfight.
The video, I had to turn down the thing because there's like a pursuit camera mode that is enterable where basically your ship will, if you line up your target right, will start following so you can focus on shooting right instead of you having to also fly at the same time. By base, it like shakes your camera all over the screen. I turned that off.
I would like to highlight a review for this game, if you will.
Yeah.
This review is great. One guy made this. One guy. If I could step into my underpants each morning without losing my balance, I consider that day a win. Juxtapose this solo dev who decided to do Star Citizen completely solo, and they actually did it. It ain't perfect, but compared to me standing victoriously in my underpants, it's a gosh darn miracle. Big thumbs up.
Yeah, it's great. It's just the kind of game where like I don't tend to buy early access games anymore. It's not really a thing that I do because I know if I buy them, I tend to not come back unless they're really good. And this is one of those games I played it in early access because I heard it's so good, and it is that good. And I'm going to keep coming back to it throughout early access until it's released and play it because I don't want to not play it until it's released. So I'm having enough fun with it in the base version that I'm going to keep playing it. Same with like Valheim. Valheim was good enough to warrant buying an early access and actually playing, and I'm going to be happy to come back to it when it's done. So yeah, I was just super satisfied with this and very impressed.
It sounds awesome.
Who else wants to take a whack here at a game they found impressive or surprise them? And also, we've been saying a lot of positive things. It doesn't have to be positive. We can talk about how surprising it was that Forspoken was.
It
wasn't surprising.
Yeah, it wasn't
surprising. Didn't surprise me one friggin' bit. Okay.
I was surprised that other people were surprised.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. I only wrote down positive things.
That's fine. Yeah, if you got more positive things,
wholesome cast.
I know. Kind of going on the same road that Wyatt started down earlier. It was Final Fantasy III. Because before playing Final Fantasy III, the 3D version that I think you can still buy on Steam, I don't think it was completely replaced by the Pixel remaster. But before that, I thought that all JRPGs were just Pokemon. And this came at a time when like Sword and Shield had just come out not too long before it. And I was just like, man, this turn-based stuff is slow and stupid, and it's already been run to the ground, and nothing's ever been made that's interesting with turn-based at all. And let it be known that Final Fantasy III like isn't even one of the good ones. It's like just okay. Like the characters were given names in the 3D remake. Doesn't mean they have characters because they didn't in the original because it was an NES game, and they just didn't. There were just classes that you could pick. But the game has the job system, so you can make your party member out of whatever like 25 different classes you want that are all like level upable and customizable, and you can carry over stuff from them onto under-leveled versions of other classes to kind of make your own new thing. And like I love that the Pixel remasters exist, but part of me just wants I just want them all to be remade in like low poly chibi like Nintendo DS, because that's where the port started. It's a DS port onto Steam. Where because everybody's just so goddamn cute and small. None of these characters are threatening because they're all small and round and dumb looking and adorable. But all like the monster models will be like really like awesomely modeled in low poly 3D and stuff. I couldn't tell you a single thing about the story today because I don't think it really mattered. It was literally in the era where they were just like, "Here's the 4 crystals, just get them, and just kill the big green cloud lady at the end before something bad happens. So make sure, I don't know, go do that."
Make
Good
sure
old
it
Cloud of
doesn't.
Darkness.
Here's an
Yeah.
airship.
It was yeah, and the airship, of course. But it was like it had that was right when they like mastered the very basics, I think. And I think it's like the perfect starter JRPG for someone who is as dumb towards the genre as I was at the time, because it's just like it's the bare bones just done really really well, and there's no really problems with it. There's no like gaping like holes in the gameplay or anything. It's just everything works. It's just very very simple. It was also pretty easy for the most part. But yeah, that was my first step, the first rung on the ladder of me becoming the horribly annoying person I am today, where the only thing I want to play or talk about is more JRPGs, and you can blame it all on Final Fantasy III, the 3D remaster on Steam. So thank you and you're welcome, Square Enix, for putting that game there. I think you could
Finally,
control it all with a mouse.
Square Enix has been really bad at getting these games to platforms where people can actually play them in the past.
Yeah.
I'm glad they're finally getting everything available in ways that are accessible to a lot of people. All right, I'm going to continue the JRPG train, Brett, because I have played a JRPG recently that has been very surprising to me, because I really didn't like Octopath Traveler. I really didn't like Octopath Traveler. And I picked up Octopath Traveler 2 specifically because Jason Schreier was tweeting out a bunch of things about how good it is. And he was saying it's much better than the first game. So I picked it up. I picked it up on my PS5 because I also heard it has haptic feedback. And so I want the PS5 feedback.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And it does. It's very fun. It's very good. The thing that really has surprised me with Octopath Traveler 2 is that it's not that different from the first game, but everything just feels a little bit more tuned. Notably, there's a thing you can check in the menu to disable the like big vignette that the first game had around the corners that was like really darkening everything. You can turn that off, and so that to me just made it look so much better. I think the cast of characters here was much more interesting, which from the get-go is really good because I was a lot more drawn to multiple characters. I was like, who am I going to play? And there were a lot of choices and things like I could have seen myself picking any of these characters, whereas with Octopath Traveler 1, I felt like they played so strongly into very specific niches that it was hard to see what was unique about them. Of like they played really into really strong archetypes instead of actually being super unique. Whereas here, it feels like things are a lot more interesting. There's also, you have more actions you do in the overworld, and they feel more impactful. Of now, every character has 2 actions, one they do in the day and one they can do at night. And you can swap between day and night whenever you want. It's like you just press the trigger, and it swaps between day and night on the overworld. And things are different. So there'll be different characters around. There'll be like secret merchants. I found a black market that's only open at night. And then I went there a couple nights in a row, and there were different people there every time. So there was different little NPCs and merchants around to interact with. The character that I started with is a mage that was accused of killing their family.
This is the same one that I watched Wrestle Ryan play through the beginning.
Accused of killing it, because I read that description and I was like, I need to play this character. There's a warning when you pick him, because it's like you will be locked to only this character until chapter 2, and I was like, great. Good.
It better be good.
Sell me on this one character, and it did. It really sold me. I love the idea because your character gets muzzled in the like first 5 minutes because they're a mage, and they're like, "Oh, we can't allow you to speak," and so they muzzle you. And so you're going through the first section of the game, just hearing the inner thoughts of this mage as he's like plotting a way to escape this prison. And it's super interesting, and it's a really strong thematic start. And there's like strong character moments. You have a bond with a character in the prison that like helps you break out and then goes out and like has a like different attitude of what you should be doing at the end. So you have this like little fight between yourselves, and it's not the first game. It feels super hero versus villain. This felt more like a character trying to like figure out what was going on and having to come up with fun things to get out. And yeah, I was really, really surprised by how good this was. I think the combat gave me access to more fun tools quicker, which felt good. I liked that everyone has like a limit break style thing now. So the character that I was playing, their thing is that their magic is normally like strong AoE magic, but you can focus it with your limit break to be like a super strong single hit for taking down bosses, which was really cool. Yeah, it was very fun. The voice acting is way better than the first game, I think. Not to say that the first game had bad voice acting, but everything in this one has felt a lot better. Yeah.
I did not like the voice acting in the first game. I thought it was very
I didn't play
annoying.
enough of it to know for sure. I played one character who was fine, like nothing great, but like I wouldn't say it was bad. I'd say it was the direction was just very milquetoast.
Yeah.
Whereas with the second game, I felt like there was a personality coming through in every character's voice, which is really hard to do and very fun. It was also, from what I saw, fully voice acted in the second game. There might have been like one or two side characters that didn't have it. When you were like talking to a shopkeeper, but I think everyone I talked to had voice acting. I'll have to double check, but it definitely felt like that, even if that wasn't the case, which I think is a good thing. Of like, it felt voice acted enough that I was not thinking about it not being voice acted. And yeah, I'm excited to get the other characters and actually go through the world. And the biggest change, I haven't gotten to this yet, but the thing I'm super glad about, there's party chatter. So your party will have party chatter in battle, which is like such a small thing. But just the idea that your party is acknowledging that there are other party members is really the thing that was my biggest hang up in Octopath 1. I can deal with a lot of narrative dissonance. When you're walking around in a party of characters and not at any point in the first like 2/3 of the game does anyone mention the other characters, that's when you lose me.
Dude.
It just is so confusing.
Yeah.
Whereas with this one, there's party chatter, and there's also like pair quests of two characters will have a quest together. So you can like see how these two characters would interact on like a little side story that is actually playing into their stuff. Which, yeah, is very fun. I'm excited to continue playing. I actually want to keep playing the game. Unlike the first game, where like I hit the point in the first game where I completed 2 chapters of a character story and was like, all right, I'm good. There were some stories I wanted to finish, but because not all of them were engaging to me, I didn't want to have to play through all of them to grind to level up.
Exactly.
Whereas here, everything I've seen so far has been engaging. I'm about to pick up Throne, I think is how you say her name. Who's the thief character in this one, and I've heard her story's good, so I'm excited to play through that. And the great thing about, I think, the character I picked is that you don't have time pressure as your starting thing, so it doesn't feel like you need to immediately do a thing, because his like big deal is he just wants revenge on the person that threw him in jail, but he has to get strong again after being in prison for years, so you have a reason to believe like he's not going to rush to do something. So yeah, I just thought that this game was handled really well, and it felt like it took a lot of lessons from the first game, but is still playing up the Octopath Traveler aspect of it being like 8 characters with separate stories. And there's confirmation they come together at the end into like a cool final confrontation, which the first game also had. So I'm excited to get there. It's felt a lot more to me like one of the classic Saga games, which I think were a much better way to do the Octopath Traveler thing in the past, of like just having different playable characters that you can pick one by one. And I think that has worked really well. So I've been thoroughly surprised by Traveler 2 and how good it looks, because the PS5 and PC versions have like really good shadows over all the stuff that the Switch version doesn't, and it looks very good.
Yeah, they've toned down the bloom so you can actually look at the screen too, which is very nice.
Yeah, the bloom's still there, but this time it feels less like eye Vaseline and more like an aesthetic choice.
my big thing with the visuals was how like dull the color palette was.
Yeah, it's very brown in the original.
Have they addressed that?
I chose a character that starts in a prison that is covered in snow. So,
Ooh.
but I will say that did mean they had like really bright and poppy fires around that like were casting light everywhere that was bright and not like muted. It was very bright orange firelight. So I think it's been better. I did get to like a forest area afterwards of that prison segment, and the forest area looked really good. It was like forest with ruins, and it was very green and bright and not muddy like like Octopath 1 tended to be. Also, the magic looks really good. Like they do some really cool stuff with the camera will like pan and rotate now when you use powerful magic and like do it with your big your thing where you can like charge up if you don't. You get like an extra point every turn, and you can expend them to do more powerful stuff. And when you do now, the camera will like swing behind your character and show them from the back doing the cool move, which looks really good. Yeah, it looks super cool. It was very surprising. All right, who wants to take a hack at something?
I got one. So this is a very like sort of AA budget release, but from a big publisher that we've all heard of. But Call of Juarez Gunslinger is awesome, and if you haven't played it before, go play it. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I was like, oh, it's this little arcadey kind of like cowboy first person shooter. Okay, we'll see. No, this game has tons of style and personality, and the gunplay feels great. It's got all these fun little wacky scenarios for you, and like it's got this great like
What'd you say it
draw
was called
mechanic
again?
too. Call of Juarez Gunslinger.
Call
which
of
I-
Juarez.
Yeah. Great game.
Juarez.
Great game. And again, it's this little
Juraez.
yeah. I say it's surprising because it's this very like unassuming little package, right? Like there's no like crazy multiplayer or anything like that. It's from Ubisoft or developed by Ubisoft. I think one of their teams, and it's very un-Ubisoft. You know what I mean? It's not this crazy big open world. It's a really tight, really focused, like like
Ooh, that looks like some
awesome.
fun gunplay.
Not Ubisoft. Hold on, I'm getting all of this mixed around. Oh my god, I'm very wrong. It's shit.
Deep Silver?
Hold on. Yes, thank you. But it's just this. It's this tight little arcade shooter, and it has a lot. It doesn't last too long, but you know those few hours that it does last is just fantastic.
Yeah, I had a great time with that game too when I played it. Surprisingly runs incredibly well on Steam Deck and is a very fun Steam Deck first-person shooter.
I think those similar games are right. This absolutely looks like if Borderlands was only Old West guns.
Which I will say, this is part of a series, and the series does not normally have this like cartoony look to it. This is the only.
This was like an
game to have
experimental game.
Adopted that, yeah, and it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
All right. If anyone else has something, speak now or hold your peace, because I have a second segment for us to go into, unless you want to bring something else up.
I have one more thing.
Go for it.
And it's going to be, possibly controversial, but that should surprise no one. What are we, like 150 million episodes in the podcast by this point?
I think this is 150 actually. So
Oh my, what?
good number to pull out of your.
There we go. All right.
Either 150 or 149.
Well, close enough, I guess. Halo Reach, Forge World. Because when the game came out, I mean, when we all were younger, I think Forge World was like the coolest thing ever, and to this day, I think it is the best Forge that Halo has had, because Halo 4 and 5 might have had a lot more like the shapes that you make actually cast real-time shadows, and you can make them different colors instead of just gray. But now there's so many options. By the time you've gotten to Infinite, we're like, yeah, you could just make like an Arby's, like one-to-one, make your local Arby's and have that be
essentially a full
deathmatch
game
match.
engine at this point.
Exactly, but it's just you're using like Blender now, and it is simply too much for me to handle, because I don't care about remaking my local Walmart 1-to-1, or like making like a thing from like ODST 1-to-1 or something. Like I just want to make something that like there's just some charm that like when you're like 14 or whatever, and you just make the closest thing you can to a Gundam. It's like building with Legos. You can't get it 100% perfect, but you can still tell what it is, and there's that kind of charm to it. And like, oh well, all the pieces have to be hollow because the way I made it, so I built a bunch of man cannons up inside it, so you could go up the thing and launch out the top or whatever. And now it's like you could probably just make it 1-to-1, like exactly like a 3D model with a million pieces in it, which is great for people that have all that time. But I think there was just some magic in Halo Reach Forge World that was just the perfect balance of simplicity and possibility to do cool things, where I think it's still unmatched to this day. I'm going to be honest with you.
I think it was great at getting people who wouldn't normally use that type of thing to use it, because it was deceptively simple.
Yeah.
And it was really fun that you could do it in multiplayer, even in couch co-op, and like be able to quick swap to playing from editing, so you could do fun things like messing around with each other. Mm-hmm. I think that was just very fun back in the day to like play co-op Forge mode stuff and like build weird mini games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that was controversial at all, Brett. I mean, it's a very well-remembered mode.
That's what we call
and
it.
I would say Halo Infinite also looks very fun.
Halo Infinite, you can do some truly incredible things with that. I was using it for about 15 minutes, and then I was starting to get Vietnam flashbacks to
too close to a real game engine.
And it was a little too close to home, and I was like, I have to stop because this is giving me bad memories. Which is not, listen, to be clear, I don't really blame Infinite Forge for that or 343 for that, because that's what they want to do, and they've done it really well. That's more of just a personal thing, right? Yeah. Where it's like, wow, this is too much for someone with my history and the experiences that I've had. But I mean, we've seen some truly, I mean, people have remade Mario Kart with Halo Infinite Forge, which is pretty cool, and like a decently made Mario Kart map at that. It's pretty interesting.
You can make high quality maps for the dev team so that they can pretend to release content faster. That's incredible.
All right. Well, I want to move us on to a second thing, which is I want to gauge the excitement for, and more importantly, I want to gauge if you think any games coming out this year are going to surprise you, either positively or negatively. Like, is there a game that you think will be good, but you have like a little niggling feeling in the back of your mind? It's like, oh, I don't like that. Or is there a game that you think has a chance of being good that everyone's ragged on? Let's start with, I think, the big one. Oh, go for it, Alex. You got something.
What's the... All right.
I'll talk about the big one a little bit then.
I am very, very hopeful for Flintlock. I have a pretty good feeling that the gameplay is at least going to be solid. But there is like the nagging feeling in the back of my head that everything about it is just going to be adequate and the story is going to be sort of forgettable.
Because we haven't seen a lot of it still. I feel like we only have that first like showing to go off of, unless they've had more on a developer Discord or something. Not that we would know. But I don't know. It is worrying, I agree, but it also looked really cool, so I hope that they're just cooking.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to let them cook.
Yeah, and that team's put some good stuff out before, so I'm not super concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least the publisher has put out some fun stuff, but I'm very curious to see how Flintlock plays, because I think if it plays well, I'm going to be super into this game.
Oh, absolutely.
All right.
I usually have like a game budget where it's, okay, we do the Game Pass, I have my Destiny addiction, and then I buy like one AAA
what do you have
the
year. Time for to do? I think that's a good pick. The big one for me is Tears of the Kingdom.
In a good or a bad way?
Both. Because I think Tears of the Kingdom is not going to be... I don't think there's a chance that Tears of the Kingdom is bad. Like, I think there's a 0%, like, this game's bad. No way. I do think there is a significant chance that this game is just Breath of the Wild again, and that would be disappointing to me. Largely because I think Breath of the Wild was really, really good, but could really use a few more things. Like it needs something in the way of progression that feels a little bit more permanent, in terms of like gear or something that just means when I get to the end of like a long thing or like climb the tallest mountain and I find the cool sword, I don't immediately go put it in my house and never touch it again, because I don't want to ever have to go do that a second time.
Yeah.
You don't want to break
I think
it.
that's the problem that needs to be solved, more so than even like the dungeon thing. Of like, if they can make it so that I feel excited about these weapons and whatnot instead of wanting to just toss them and never worry about it, I would be very happy, and I hope they do. I really hope that's a thing that they have found a solution for. But the back of my mind is like, they haven't teased it. To be fair, they haven't teased much at all. So I don't think it's a bad sign that they haven't shown it, because Nintendo is not typically a show all their cards before release developer. But there's a little sense, my spidey sense in the back of my head is going, they may not fix that, they may not adjust that, and then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be sad if it doesn't get adjusted. Because I think that single-handedly takes like a full point away from my, like, if I were to rate it on a 10 score of like my enjoyment, I think that takes a full point away on the list. That's what'll keep it from being a 10 for me if it doesn't fix that problem. So I really hope it does.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like if the game was coming out like even just a year ago, I feel like the chances of that happening would be like multiplied by 10 million.
Yes.
Because like only recently has it become cool to start hating on Breath of the Wild, where like when it first came out, it was just like Joseph Anderson and me and nobody else.
Oh, you're about to say you did it before it was cool.
Because that's not what I was getting at. But I guess now I'm a hipster. But now, like, because with any game that like comes out and everyone's like fawning over it, it's really hard to look at the negatives for it. And like right when Breath of the Wild came out, it was just like, oh, this is the masterpiece, this is a perfect game. Like, okay, look, there's this little group of people over here talking about how the non big boss man dungeons are all the same and they're all like bad or whatever. Like, push them over to the side. This doesn't matter. Weapon durability. Poof, I'm just gonna keep playing the game for 500 more hours. But it's been a long enough time now where, and this happens with like every game that was a masterpiece when it came out, where people are more willing to be like, ah, yes, now that I've gotten back to play it after not playing it for 2 or 3 years, I can now see that this is a lot more annoying than I remember this being, and weapon durability is really annoying and stupid. And all these other things are not that great. So I feel like there's a higher chance that more time has passed that those things will be fixed. But I do know what you mean, in that they could still be riding the high of like, oh, well, we totally just made a perfect game, so we just have to do the same thing again and not really change all that much. It'll still be perfect, which has been a mistake that devs have made in the past and not learned from at all. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think for me it's less of this is a universally bad mechanic, but to me that's a mechanic that works once. And it's whenever I replay Breath of the Wild, it's the one thing that I don't enjoy. And I think that's really going to be the problem of now even people that haven't replayed the game a bunch are going to be dealing with it again, and I don't know if that's a thing that people are going to be into. I could be wrong. I also think like the fix for me could be as simple as just doubling the durability of almost everything, just making it less bad so I don't feel like I'm using it against one enemy and it's gone. I don't think it needs to be a system of like you always have these things. Maybe like certain weapons, like your pinnacle weapons you get from cool stuff, doing like a cool dungeon or something, or a cool like climbing the top of the mountain and doing whatever, or flying to this weird island at the edge of the flyable space and doing like a challenge to get this cool sword. If those would like break but not actually break, so you could go repair them somewhere, I'd be fine with that too. I just want a way for it to not be ethereal. Like, let me use the cool thing, even if it breaks, let me reacquire it without having to go do the whole thing that I did the first time again. I think I would be into that. So.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on Tears of the Kingdom before we move on? Nope. All right.
Tears of the Kingdom.
Just Tears of the Kingdom. You know, are you crying for the kingdom? Single lone tear dripping down Alex's face. All right. Wyatt,
Yes.
there's a Star Wars game coming out this year.
I just wanted to talk about that actually, because so Jedi Survivor, it's one of my fantasy critic games. So always hope it does well. Respawn, always hope they do well. Star Wars, always hope it does well. Often doesn't, but that's just the way of things these days. My big worry, and I feel like I always kind of notice this with studios that are in Respawn's position. Respawn's working on a lot of projects right now. There's a lot going on over there at the moment.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure, most, if not all, hands are on deck for Jedi Survivor. But anytime, I feel like wow, I just had another
just
studio
fully
in my
lost
brain,
it.
and I wow, okay. Hey, who made that game we were just talking about? Outer Worlds. Who
Obsidian.
made that
Obsidian,
game?
yeah.
Thank you. I always get them and Paradox confused for some reason. I don't know why. They're working on a lot of projects as well.
Crusader Kings.
I feel like
Fallout New
I
Vegas.
always exactly. I always feel like I get very concerned when it appears to me like a studio is really spreading itself thin, especially a studio that's spreading itself thin and is under the reign of EA. It always is just makes me very, very nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, everything we've seen about it so far, it looks good. But it's EA. You never know.
When's the
You
last
never
time
know
they've
when
done
they're
something
gonna
good?
get their
You feel like
grubby
there's
little
just a
hands
little
on
like
something.
EA warning flare going off in your head.
Every
Yeah.
Yeah.
game that's connected to EA, unless it's part of their their like originals program or their like indie
Yeah.
program, I forget what it's called.
Originals,
that where
I
they just give the developer money and back the hell off. So those are usually fine, but anything EA proper, there's always a constant little red light. There's that like classic kind of like alarm sound from Star Wars, the
Yeah, the klaxons.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, Respawn, they haven't missed. I think Apex at least started off good.
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
don't
count as
really-
a miss.
Yeah, for sure. Apex was a hit, and I think the
Yeah.
community has since soured to the
Definitely
point
fell
that
off.
it's falling off, but it doesn't take
But
away
I
from
Amount
the
of
achievement
Pepsi
that was
plushies will
Apex.
save it now.
But I mean, Respawn has an incredible track record, honestly, and so I have all the faith in them in the world. But again, it's like it's a studio that's spread thin. It's under EA's reign. You just don't know. I mean, and
Yeah.
again, everything we've seen gameplay wise, there's nothing. It's not like a Suicide Squad situation where it's just alarm bells all
Yeah.
over the place. What is happening? Oh God,
There's
what have you done?
There's no like huge warning signs, but at the same time, like I haven't, because even like the first game, like I haven't seen anything that's like I'm gonna be floored by either of these games. Like, oh, this is gonna be a solid Star Wars lightsaber action game, which is fine. But how many times can you do that before one of them gets made as Dead Space 3 and goodbye Respawn?
Oh.
it's
And
I
I
don't
will
know.
say too, one thing that does help is Respawn has a good track record of telling EA to fuck off when they're trying to work
Yeah.
on something. I know when
Very
when they were working on Apex, they're like, listen, guys, you're making a studio that's known for one thing, having them make something completely different in a genre that has a lot of skepticism surrounding it, and it's free to play. Back
Leave
off.
us
Yeah.
alone.
Leave us alone. Let us do our thing. Vince doesn't really take a lot of shit from people.
He
That's
does
just
not.
I
kind of.
admire
awesome.
anyone who has the ability to tell that to EA.
I
Yeah.
love the story when Titanfall 2 came out, wasn't selling very well. Vince was at some game show, something or other, and he was sitting with some, EA executive, and someone was like, so, Titanfall 2 hasn't been selling very well. What's the future of the franchise? And then Vince Impello was about to answer, and then the executive is like, well, we're very invested in the future of Titanfall. We have big plans for da-da-da-da-da. Long
Titanfall
silence.
is part of our company's DNA. That's why
Exactly.
we're shutting it down.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then at the end of that tirade, Vince just goes, so yeah, Whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah, which is a direct quote. He said that like on interview. Like that's incredible.
which is great. So listen, anything that Vince is looking over, hopefully he can guard them. He can keep them away from the evil forces of Electronic Arts. But you just never know. You just never know.
Sad reality.
Hey, that's why my I'll no, that's not for the podcast.
I
Oh dear.
I love that you've caught yourself, Alex. I'm glad.
I don't know if you were
Whatever
gonna-
was to be said is not.
I don't know if you were going to bring up anything else, Ryan, but that's my primary concern.
Yeah, no, I think I'm with you on that. I feel like I don't have any doubt that Respawn can make a good Star Wars game now. Like I'm convinced that this game will be good. And they've shown stuff like dismemberment against human enemies now, like things that make it feel way more Star Warsy to me. So I'm very excited, but I always just have that little feeling of, hey, there's a chance something is weird here. Yeah, and I think for me, the primary concern would be that there's for some reason not going to be, because I think they've said they wanted this to be a trilogy. My concern would be that this is the last game.
Oh.
And that EA is like going to make a strange decision to cut it off and put Respawn on something else and do something just super weird. And that's
very realistically of you.
Because I think that's
so
a
unfortunate.
realistic thing that I could see happening. Which
The
I think would be
only-
really dumb if it does, but who knows?
The only other potential issue that I see right now is that I don't think it's fully open world because there still are different planet
It's in like
zones,
open
but they're-
regions, but not a world.
But they're embracing more open-ended design, which I think could work quite well for this series. But there's always growing pains when you make that kind of transition.
Yeah.
And Respawn hasn't really made a game like that before, which means there's even more growing pains involved. So
For sure.
hopefully that's a smooth transition and it works really, really well. But again, you just don't know.
All right. I have one last game to bring up, and this is actually a positive surprise to me that I'm hoping this is going to be a positive surprise, which is Redfall. I think Redfall
Yes.
we've consistently seen, and there's a lot of attitude around Redfall in the general like games journalism space is very middling, I would say. Like a lot of people just don't feel convinced by it, and I'd agree with that sentiment in that I don't think they've shown anything groundbreaking.
No.
But I am just really down for a co-op immersive semi-action looter type deal, if that's what this is. Because
With vampires.
yeah, with vampires, and that to me seems like what this is. Because I wasn't super excited for the co-op in Redfall until I realized like I know a lot of people that would be very down to play a game like this, even if they don't know about it. Like you, but I also know like we have a bunch of friends of ours that are playing Hunt Showdown, are really into Hunt Showdown right now, and I feel like this aesthetic would be very appealing to them as well. So I think we would not have an issue getting like a full group for this.
Oh, yeah.
And it being on Game Pass just helps with that. And that to me has made me a little bit more excited of, yeah, I think I could actually see myself playing a lot of co-op in this more than other co-op-y games. I think especially because like I really enjoy games like Back 4 Blood for a little while. My problem is always I hit the point of just not really caring because there's not much else to do. Like you're just replaying the same missions over and over again with slightly different modifiers, and I just kind of hit the point of just not really being that interested in what's going on.
The main draw are the cards, and I think
Yeah.
I feel like after a while, like, because it really grabs you in the beginning, but then after a while, you're like, okay, this card kind of
Once it
feels
sets in that
similar
you're
to
just
this one.
getting the cards to do the same missions over and over again, it loses me. Like I don't want to do the card grind to just play the same stuff again on higher
that's fair.
difficulties.
That's fair.
Whereas I think with Redfall, I'm just hoping it has enough enough meat on its bones to be like, there's a lot to do. And from what the like little perk trees they had looked like, I think there actually will be a lot of different abilities here, a lot of different ways to play characters. So I'm excited to see this come out and get a chance to like try it out. Because like a big thing that stood out to me is earlier today, Wyatt and I were playing the Diablo IV beta, and we had a moment where just randomly Wyatt had like charged a group of enemies into a poison trap that I'd thrown down. I was like, that's really cool.
Ooh.
I can't wait to see how much of that type of thing Arcane is doing, because that's the type of thing they would 100% be focusing on. So
Yeah.
I think that seems like a really fun thing.
Well, especially considering the different abilities that we've seen. There's been some really cool looking abilities so far.
Like I'm imagining like the character with stealth maybe lures enemies into the lightning rod that the other character has, and then you can like stealth out. I think that it's just lots of fun potential interactions there, and I think that's really going to make the game shine as long as the tuning is right. So I'm very, and now I would say I'm very optimistic about Redfall. I think this is going to be filling a void in terms of co-op-y, not super hardcore games.
And Arcane, another studio with like a really, really solid track record.
Yeah. It's like I even enjoyed I've enjoyed every game that Arcane has put out, even the ones that people have not necessarily loved. So I'm very into whatever they're gonna do next. All right. Well, for me, that's everything. Unless someone else has something they want to bring up last minute, I'll take us straight to shoutouts.
They were good.
That means shoutouts.
Shout out time.
Shout out something. Who wants to shout out?
I'll shout out something.
Yeah.
It's a scream of surprisedness when I found out that you're not supposed to put ceramic Dutch ovens on the stovetop, and they can temperature shock and crack in half with a loud bang.
Oh my god. Jesus Christ.
Good on theme surprise one. All right. I'll shout out next. I've been playing a little game called Gigabash, which is just a big kaiju fighting game where it's like fighting game is maybe a generous term for it. It's more of like a brawler.
Is this anything like the giant crab fighting game?
Alex, I want to play this game with you. That is why I bought it. Is I want to play this game with you because I think you would enjoy it. It's the big thing is you're like destroying the arena as you're playing. It's like top down and you're like doing super moves and stuff. Yeah, it feels very. I think Power Stone is probably the closest thing. I don't know if anyone else here knows what Power Stone is, but.
Why does it sound familiar?
It's a really old fighting game that was like the top down, the era of like games like Shrek 2, where they were top down fighters, where you'd run around with your abilities. It's that type of game. And yeah, I've been having a really good time with it. I was really skeptical at first because it seems very simple, but there's a lot of different like interactive things that end up happening with how the game is structured. So I've been having a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I'm excited to try it out. It also has Godzilla in it, like actual Godzilla, which is great.
Oh,
so
good.
Licensed Godzilla?
Yeah, licensed Godzilla. There's licensed Godzilla as well as Ghidorah.
It looks like an Ultraman type person.
Yeah, there's an Ultraman ripoff. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I think you would get a kick out of this game, Alex. Very
absolutely. Fun. I love that destruction.
All right.
Yeah, I'll go next. So my girlfriend and I have been binging through Batman the Animated Series, which has been a lovely return to my childhood. And I would like to shout out by far the best episode in the entire show, Almost Got Him, which, if you don't know, is an episode where Joker, Two-Face, Poison Ivy, Killer Croc, Penguin are all playing poker in this like seedy underground like little poker club, and they're all swapping stories about who came the closest to killing Batman. It is the best setup for a Batman episode I have ever seen. And I want to shout out that episode, but a specific moment where everyone's swapping stories. There's like flashbacks and everything, and then Croc just smashes his hand on the table. He's like, "It's my turn. I haven't told my story yet." He's like, "There I was, held up in some quarry when Batman showed up out of nowhere." And then they're like, "Well, what did you do next?" And he was like, "I threw a rock at him." And there's just this slow pan across the rest of the table, and everyone's like,
"Wait, I need you to send me the scene so I can watch it."
Like, so Harvey. So there's this long silence, and then all of a sudden Ivy's like, "So Harley, how'd you get your coin back?" Or oh my god, there's a great moment where because in the show Poison Ivy and Harvey Dent used to date before Harvey Dent became Two-Face, and he's like, part of me wants to strangle you, and what does the other part want to do? Wants to hit you with a truck. And she's like, we used to date.
Cool.
Oh, it's such a good episode. Oh my god, fantastic.
It's good.
All right, wrap this up, Brett.
shout out to Evanescence, because I went to a Muse concert the other night where Evanescence opened. I had only ever
What?
heard "Bring Me to Life," the meme song. And I have to tell you that screaming "Save Me" at the top of your lungs in a crowd of like a million people is a religious experience, and
Sounds like it.
I am now hooked. It was awesome, and my feet still hurt, and my ears are still ringing. Which is both good signs that the show was a good one. So there you go.
Pretty great. All right, well, that's the end of the show. We'll be back next week, as always, talking about games that we've played, fun stuff. We got a Hi-Fi Rush Games Club will be coming up soon. We're doing an Arkham Asylum Games Club at some point soon. A lot of wheels spinning right now to get some fun stuff happening. Also, we all are going to be playing Anthem. That video is going to be up on April 4th.
Oh.
Or April 1st, not April 4th. I don't know what I'm talking about. April 1st. April Fool's Day because it's Anthem.